Hey guys, welcome to the My Sugar Free Journey podcast. We are here with our guest today, Brett Lloyd. So Brett is someone that I follow on Twitter and, mostly Twitter. Do you have an Instagram account too?
Yes, I do. It's
Yeah.
thankful.carnivore.
Okay, yeah, we're going to talk about that as well. But Twitter is where I see you most of the time because Instagram is it's a weird animal. You know, I'll flip through the first 10 or 15 things and it's people that maybe I don't even follow them. I don't always know what I don't always know what I'm seeing. But Twitter, thank God, Twitter's got it figured out. If somebody posts something on Twitter, if I scroll down far enough, I'll see it. So I'm happy with the way Twitter's laid out. But anyway, all that to say that I am here today with Brett Lloyd, and he. I've heard him on a couple of the podcasts. I've followed him on Twitter. It's an interesting story. I think you guys will enjoy it. So let's just get him on here. Brett, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Aaron, for having me. I look forward to sharing my experience and let's together put some good out into the world.
Yeah, I agree, and I really appreciate the little videos you do every morning or most mornings and everything. And I think those are important. That's the kind of thing that I wish I could do more of. I just work 16 hours a day, and it's hard to get any time to do anything. So I'm really appreciative when people are being able to get their story out there, and that's why I wanted to have you on the podcast, because I think you have great stories. So let's get right into it. What is your background? Where are you coming from, and who did you used to be?
I was born and raised in Huntington, West Virginia. My parents had an enormous vegetable garden, and I was raised on the classic standard American diet. Plenty of meat, fresh vegetables year round. Mm-hmm. And out of the four of us, my dad is unfortunately at the end of his journey, suffered from end-stage renal disease as a consequence of 20 plus years of type 2 diabetes. My sister suffers from ulcerative colitis. My mom has suffered from dozens of things over the years. She's had a cancer scare. She's had autoimmune issues. She's still with us and doing fairly well, all things considered. And I suffered from chronic depression, severe anxiety, and insomnia for over 40 years.
Oh my gosh. And insomnia is the worst part of it.
Insomnia,
I could go through a lot of stuff. If you take away my sleep, I'm pretty
insomnia bad. Will take you into some scary places. I'm afraid to say. I know firsthand, and it sounds like you do as well. Anyway, I was a jock. I think that was the only reason I didn't get sick sooner than I did. But looking back with healthy eyes over my shoulder now, I could say with good certainty that I started experiencing symptoms at the age of 15.
Oh my goodness. Well, let's get into what those symptoms are. How was your health affected in particular?
Well, depression for me was an extreme dissatisfaction with life. Nothing was ever good enough. Nothing worked right, even if it did. I would come up with, I was so dissatisfied with everyone and everything, and especially myself. I would get locked into delusions like, if I only had the iPhone 7 Plus, everything for me would get better.
Yeah.
And then I'd get the iPhone 7 Plus, and inside of an hour, I would find 15 things about it that I didn't like and why it was a piece of crap. And if only I had whatever the next new thing was, things would be better. Wow. I'm a musician. I'm sitting in my recording studio right now, and it was a common thing. If I only had this software, if I only had that plug-in, it was never enough. It was never, and it could never do the job because I was unable to process reality accurately. Mm. My wife would say to me, "It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood." Mm-hmm. But my illness, depression, would take that and twist it and nudge it to where what I heard was, "Oh yeah, it's going to be a beautiful day. Yeah, sure." That's what I would hear.
Right.
That's not what came out of her mouth. And so, because I love my wife and adore her, I would be like, "What do you mean, honey? That is what's wrong." "Nothing's wrong. Why would you say that?" And then it became almost impossible for me to communicate because nothing I saw, nothing I felt, nothing I heard was accurate. Hmm. And that's not a good way to be. A nightmare.
My wife recently had cataract surgery, and so she had these cataracts removed. And one of the first things that she noticed was how much brighter, the world was, and she could see colors, and and so it when she was talking like that, I was thinking about people that have depression and those kind of things. That it seems to be like a cataract over your soul. There's just a filter there that warps and changes and makes things grayer and less bright, and the sunlight has a harder time getting through. And when you're behind that filter, if that's the only reality, you don't know that there's a filter there. You don't really have any way of seeing it, and you don't really have any way of removing it, and you need some kind of outside help, because it's not something you can fix for yourself.
Yeah, and it's so insidious and awful. I wouldn't wish depression on anybody, no
Right.
matter if I didn't care for them as a human. It's a horrible, life-stealing illness. I used to describe it as, imagine if you could live in every day with a 50-pound anvil on your head.
Right.
You wake up with it. It's weighing down on you from the second you open your eyes until you close your eyes that night to go to sleep. It wears on you, it grinds you down. And it's
Right.
not, it doesn't matter how strong you are, what kind of physical or mental fortitude you think you have, depression's going to stomp you into dust over time. And I was first diagnosed in 1990. It was put on meds, Prozac. They were very expensive. I didn't have health insurance, so I wasn't on them for very long to get any therapeutic benefit out of them. But then about 5 years later, I started having severe, off the charts panic attacks. One so horrible that it was called the ER. I thought I was having a heart attack. I did the ambulance ride, the nitroglycerin under my tongue, the whole 9 yards, only to find out there wasn't anything wrong with my heart, which was a good thing.
Yeah.
It was a very good thing. But so then I had to accept the fact that something very serious emotionally, mentally wasn't right. And I went and saw a physician. He just told me straight up, he says, listen, if you don't start taking medicine now, you're going to start having serious, serious problems. So I started taking Prozac compliantly in 1995. And from 1995 until the end of 2017, my brain chemistry was under a constant assault by prescribed medications.
Yeah.
That really didn't do that much for me. The first couple of years, I had some decent response to Prozac, but what would start happening is I'd have these periods of wellness, and then inexplicably out of nowhere, my mood would crater. And it would take longer and longer to kind of climb out of the ditch to get back to whatever therapeutic level, real or imagined, that Prozac was providing. And fast forward to about 2006, 2007, I had a textbook nervous breakdown.
Really?
And there was a familial event that I don't go into detail about. And I didn't sleep more than an hour or two a night for almost 2 months solid. And when you don't sleep for that long,
Yeah.
bad things start to happen. I started hearing children playing in the yard when there was nobody home but me, kind of things. And you get your diagnosis adjusted. When that happens, I got bumped to major depression with psychotic features. They put me on a medication called Remeron, and I got to sleep for 2 whole weeks. It was great. 2 weeks of sleep, and I gained about 25 pounds in that 2 weeks because of the meds.
Right.
Notorious weight gainer. Then after that, I got to experience another 6 to 8 weeks of only 1 to 2 hours of sleep. Anxiety's insanely off the chart. My mood's cratering in ways I never imagined possible. It's very difficult to communicate at all, to articulate to my wife. There was a constant state of tension and disruption. And the doc finally found a med that kind of stopped me in my tracks, stopped the free fall. It's called Symbyax. And it was 2 drugs in one. It was Prozac plus an antipsychotic medication whose name I can never remember because I can't pronounce it. Starts with an A. That stopped the free fall, but I was sleeping 12 hours a night, plus 1 or 2 2-hour naps during the day. I had almost no motivation. I'm a musician. I just looking at a guitar frightened me. It was just because I knew I would become emotionally open and susceptible to all sorts of unpleasantness. And for the next year and a half, well, to the end of 2008, it was just a nightmare. But at the end of 2008, I was like, okay, I've come to terms. Some of these things I can never change. What happened, happened. We got to live. Life's got to go on. So I'm going to get better because I'm not going to dwell on this nightmare anymore. Mm. That was my thinking. But I happened to tell my wife around the 1st of 2009 that I was really tired of being overweight. I'd gained like 45 pounds or so through that nervous breakdown period over that year and a half, 2 years. And she said, well, I've heard about this Atkins diet. Why don't you try it? So I was never into new diets or nutrition. I ate what I wanted. I was told growing up, when you get out on your own, you can eat what you want, when you want. That's how adults live. So that's kind of what I did. I just ate a lot of bread and meat and potatoes and a lot of bread, and ice cream, cakes, etc. But I started on this Atkins diet because it was simple. I just cut your starches down. Well, I didn't cut them down. I eliminated them. Right. Cut your bread. Don't eat potato chips and things like that. Okay, I eliminated all that. And I lost like 40 pounds. And my mood got better. But my wife and I, at no time, attributed my improvement in mood to the diet. At no time did my doctor say,
that's funny.
Hey, it's because you changed your diet. It's the reason why nobody even remotely suggested to me that there could be a dietary component to any of this. I got to go to my 30-year high school reunion. I had a really good year. And life was pretty decent. I still was suffering symptoms, but it was almost manageable. Well, fast forward.
You were still on medication at this point?
Yes, I was still on medication, but I was on different. I'd cut out the stuff that made me sleep all those hours, and was Prozac. They put me on Ativan because my anxiety through the breakdown was just insane and off the charts. Horrible. Anxiety is another awful thing. It's a terrible life stealer. And they put me on trazodone, and that's what finally got me to sleep, was trazodone, which is another SSRI, but used off-label for insomnia. It's very effective in helping me go to sleep and stay asleep, but I woke up with a drug hangover every day for 8 years because of that medicine. Anyway, by May of 2010, I was thinking, I'd like to eat some ice cream. And if I gained a bunch of weight, I'll just go back on Atkins.
Right.
No harm, no foul. So fast forward to July of 2010, I'm at Mass on Sunday evening. I'm a thankful Catholic convert. And it's right before consecration. We're on our knees praying, and I get this internal red alert, this prescient feeling hit me. I wasn't anxious. It was, if you don't get out of here right now, something very bad is going to happen. And I love going to Mass. Communion is very important to me, but I did something extraordinarily atypical. I jumped up and ran out of that church. And 15 minutes later, I'm curled up on my couch, bawling like a baby, and have no idea why.
Wow.
And from July of 2010 to January of 2015 was just a roller coaster in and out of hell, deeper and deeper into the pit every time. They put me on more med combinations than you can imagine. I've been on, Prozac was always like the foundation. Well, they tried Prozac with Wellbutrin, Prozac with Prestige, Prozac with Effexor, which is generic Prestige. They Zoloft. They tried me on. It was on. After a while, they ran out of SSRI combinations, and they changed my diagnosis to bipolar 2, which I never bought into. But you get different meds when you've got a bipolar 2 diagnosis, and they didn't work either. I was on Lamictal for a time, which is originally a seizure medication. but it's also used to treat bipolar disorder and major depression. And so many of these drugs just made me into like, if you've ever saw One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, I was basically like Danny DeVito's character at times, just unable to speak coherently, couldn't really process things very well. I was still writing and recording music by this time, and it was just awful. I was constantly, I would have good musical ideas, but I could not implement them because my depression would, oh, this really sounds good, when in reality, no, it didn't. It was horrible. My wife got transferred, her job got transferred to here in Jacksonville, Florida, so I had to find a new doctor. Not knowing anybody, having any family or friends, that didn't help. By January 2015, Aaron, I weighed 289 pounds. The last psychiatrist I'll ever have, not named Georgia Eade or Paul Saladino, told me in all seriousness that I should seriously either experience electroshock therapy or institutionalize myself for a long-term hospitalization. And ironically, in my 20s, I worked in the mental health field and saw patients 30 minutes after they'd had electroshock therapy. There was no way they were doing that to me.
Right.
And as far as the long-term hospitalization goes, I had a very real fear that if I went in, I might never come out.
Right.
I never wanted to end my life, but I did have suicidal ideation, and it went along the lines of, well, if you were going to do it, how would you do it? Well, I don't want to think about that. I'm a Catholic. I got real serious beliefs about that. Now, I just don't know. I don't want to know. All right, so we're not going to do it, but if you were going to do it, how would you do it? And it was a constant in my head all the time. Thanks be to God, this lady, she answered a Craigslist ad. I'd written a bunch of blues music that I couldn't sing, and I needed a singer. And this lady answered the ad, and her name's Kimmy Wade. And without her, I'm probably on the other side of the grass by this point.
Wow.
But she comes in, and she's perfect for what I want, and we start working together, and she's observing me for a few months' time. And we could only really communicate about music. About musical things I could talk, but about anything else, I was not much fun to be around. And she's watching, and one day she just says, have you ever thought about or read about medical marijuana? And as a musician, it was always around, but it wasn't something that I was into. I had a bad experience with it when I was when I was in my teens, and I wanted no part of it. It just wasn't. Beer was legal. What do I need that for? But my wife and I talked about it, and I did some investigating, and there was some anecdotal evidence some people were experiencing some symptom relief with it. And my wife and I had a discussion. We're like, well, at this point, what do we have to lose?
Right.
We followed all the directions. I was a compliant patient. I took my meds as prescribed. I didn't want to be sick.
Right.
So we secure 4 grams of flour, and she looks up a can of butter recipe on the internet, and she makes these little oatmeal raisin cookies. They were definitely not carnivore. I could say with certainty they were keto type cookies because there wasn't any sugar in them. And I was so scared of these things, Aaron. Size of a quarter. I cut the first one in half. And in February 2015, I ate that cookie. And 15 minutes after that, I felt like 1,000 suns had lifted off of my body. I wasn't high. I just didn't feel like crap anymore for the first time in years. Then the high kicked in about a half hour, 45 minutes later, and cannabis did something that none of those medications I took did. It actually treated my symptoms successfully. It didn't eliminate the illnesses. But while I was under the influence of cannabis, my moods leveled, my affect brightened, the anxiety went away. I suddenly had a sense of calm, and I could sleep at night. 10 days after, my wife came home that first day from work. She didn't know who I was. There was this man, this really big obese guy standing there with a smile on his face. And she hadn't seen a smile on my face in eons. I tell people all the time, if anybody's earned their spot in heaven, it's my wife for enduring what she had to endure. Because I was extremely difficult to live with. Very hard to be around. And God love her even more for that. So by the end of 2015, I was off all the SSRIs. I was off the antipsychotic meds entirely.
All from marijuana?
All from cannabis. Yes.
Golly, that's amazing.
Oh, I'm baffled that there's not a line of people at my door to take my blood to study me.
Exactly.
It just boggles my mind. And by the end of 2016, I was off the Ativan. Cannabis successfully treated my anxiety to the point to where I didn't need it anymore. And then by the end of 2017, I was off the insomnia meds. I was off the trazodone.
So
and
you're getting good night's sleep. You feeling rested?
I'm feeling rested. 10 days into the experience, I'm putting my shoes on. And I realize my belly's in the way. I'm like, oh crap, my belly's in the way? Huh? And I go and look in the mirror, and Aaron, I see myself from head to toe accurately for the first time in years, and it terrified me. Wow. I was a heart attack and a stroke just waiting to happen. 289 pounds at 6 foot, it ain't a good place to be.
Right.
So I immediately told my wife that night, Adkins, I'm starting tonight, and I started walking my dog. I walked, half a block here, half a block there, because I was very conscious of what a great risk of committing injury I was at. I mean, I had been horribly inactive for over 5 years. I basically sat in this room in a different computer chair for 10, 12, 14 hours a day. That was life. And so no physical activity. And after a time, after I got to where I was walking like 3 or 4 blocks at a time, I'm like, well, just how far is this? And I got a GPS program for the phone, found out how far half a mile from the front door was. By May of 2018, I've walked off 94 pounds.
Wow.
And I'm feeling better, but I'm still unemployable. I'm still erratic. I'm perceiving things more accurately, but not as well as I need to be. Mm-hmm. I still have at that point, I learned to have my wife confirm things if I wasn't sure about it. Did I really hear so-and-so say such and such? But it was better than being in the pit every day.
Right.
That same lady who told me about cannabis messages me in May of 2018 and says, oh my gosh, you've got to go watch every video this guy, Jordan Peterson's ever made.
I'm a big fan of Jordan Peterson too.
Huge fan. I'm a huge fan. We had the blessing of seeing him in September of 2018 here in Jacksonville. And even though we were in the nosebleed section and he was just a little tiny speck moving around, I could hear his voice, and it was a wonderful, wonderful talk. But I'm a huge fan. His promotion, his honesty, or at least don't lie.
Or at least don't lie, right, yeah.
And accepting personal responsibility, and just if you haven't read his book 12 Rules for Life and Antidote to Chaos, I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
So I start watching Jordan Peterson videos, and lo and behold, I come across this 30-minute cutout of him on Joe Rogan explaining how his daughter figured out that if she just ate meat, salt, and water, her depression symptoms and arthritis symptoms went away. I'm like, huh? If this is anybody but Jordan Peterson telling me this, I changed the channel and I'm looking for something else in 30 seconds. But it's Jordan Peterson, somebody I believe has incredible integrity. And I'm like, and I learned that he suffered from chronic depression and anxiety issues. And that just boggled my mind even further, because how did he function at the level he functioned for all those years while he was sick? It just boggles my mind, because I was almost a vegetable. And here he is coming up with these brilliant ideas and concepts and writing these amazing books. But he eliminated his symptoms.
Right.
my wife comes home. I'm like, watch this with me. Is he really saying what I think he's saying? Oh, yeah, he's saying it. So I started investigating. Jordan Peterson says this is possible. It's probably true, but I need to learn more about it. My next video I find after I do my first search for the carnivore diet is Dr. Sean Baker on Joe Rogan. And I watched the dietary portion of that probably 50 times because I'm thinking at this point, this is too good to be true. There's got to be a flaw in the logic somewhere. Why haven't I heard about this? Why hasn't somebody suggested to me over these 20-some years that I've been fighting to get out of the depression pit that this was even remotely possible? And again, you have this Air Force combat surgeon. Aaron, you know, they just don't let anybody do that.
Right.
You've got to be an extraordinarily well put together human being to even be considered for it. So there, again, is this integrity thing.
Right. So
my next video, you know, I think God was looking at me that week because the next video was just the right one for me to see. It was Amber O'Hearn at Keto Fest 2017, where she explained in a way this guitar player could understand how we literally came out of the trees as a species eating meat. That by eating meat, animal fats is how we grew our these brains we have, got our bone structure to be what it is, etc. You know, I learned I had a cecum. I didn't even know I had a cecum. Didn't know what it was. And I'm like, I got to do this. There's enough pieces here of the puzzle. I've got to try this. So July 16th, 2018, I began living carnivorously. I only ate animal source foods, and that's all I've had every day since. 10 days into that experience, Aaron, I woke up without joint pain for the first time as an adult.
Wow.
I was never diagnosed as arthritic. I had what I thought was just normal aches and pains of having lived 57 years. You know, you fall down, you go boom, you break some bone. Things hurt, ache every now and then. But I woke up this morning and I was like a 10-year-old kid. I was taking 2-mile walks then at 6 in the morning. I'm skipping down the sidewalk, giggling like an idiot because it just feels so good.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't hurt. And then on the 24th day, I'm taking a walk, and I get emotional about this still because this is such a beautiful thing, and it's hard to describe because if you haven't been depressed, it's hard to understand. But I'm walking along, and it's like this switch flips, just like something went click. And all of the rage and all of the anger and all of the frustration and dissatisfaction and sadness, it all just went away. Just all of it just gone. And it was replaced by this waterfall of happiness and joy that hasn't left me for one moment since. And that's why I do these, is because people need to know they're not broken. You didn't get a bad roll of the genetic dice. You were just taught to consume toxins instead of real human absorbable nutrition.
Exactly.
And I haven't had a down day since. And it's 585 days today that I've been eating meat and drinking water. And every aspect of my life has been immensely improved. And I'm so blessed and thankful that I get to share this with you and anybody I can, because people need to know there's hope. You don't have to live in the darkness anymore. You don't have to suffer unnecessarily. You just need to change what you put into your mouth.
That's impressive. Do you still do anything with marijuana?
I still use cannabis. I use it. My wife and I learned, as profound as that experience was and how great life has been, I didn't have a toolbox full of happy skills ready to employ.
Right.
I had 40 plus years of learned bad depression behavior. I don't know any other way to describe it. And without cannabis, I'm the happiest, most obnoxious, hypercritical jerk you could never want to be near. But the cannabis, I'm medicated with cannabis right now.
Okay.
I'm from 6 in the morning until bedtime at night. I'm under the influence of cannabis all day long. And it makes all those behaviors just melt away. And I'm this guy you see that you see on Twitter, that people see on Instagram and on YouTube. And
are you still eating it, or are you back to? Are you smoking it now?
I don't like smoking it.
Yeah.
I stopped eating the cookies, obviously, when I became carnivore, and I will melt the butter in homemade bone broth, or I'll just pop some into my mouth when I feel like I need.
You just eat the marijuana straight?
Not the marijuana. No, the butter. The can.
Oh, the butter.
Okay. No. Never. No plant matter has come into my mouth since 2018, July 16, 2018.
Oh, well, let's talk about that. Then, like, how are you? Like, is it just drops you're putting in butter? I've never done marijuana. I don't know anything about it. So how are you making?
I prefer to vape the oil concentrates.
Okay.
Which are extracted from the flower and through some process and come in these little things, and they're insane. I'm a legal patient here in the state of Florida.
Okay.
But it's very expensive.
Okay.
But it works. And you know, I don't only mention cannabis in the fact that I don't get to carnivore without it.
Right. Okay.
I know to a certainty cannabis didn't eliminate my symptoms. It did not make me well. And I learned this the hard way when I would have to go out of town before carnivore to a state that it wasn't legal, and I had to just endure. And I could get through about 3 days of that before I could feel myself starting to fall apart again. And then it would take 6 weeks before I would get what I called at that time my calm back.
Okay.
But we've learned, and I've had people, vegans especially, oh, you're not better because of the meat, because meat can never be the reason.
Right, exactly.
It's just because of cannabis, just because you do weed. No, please. I took a job. I became employable again, Aaron.
Right.
I went back to work, and I had this really great job selling cell phones inside a big box department store. It wasn't commission. It was by the hour plus commission. People were coming to me. I could stand and talk to people. I'd shake their hands. It was I was doing pretty well with it. The downside was I couldn't eat when I was hungry. I had to eat according to their weird rules and schedule. And even if I feasted heavy in the morning so that I could make it to the 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon that I was going to get my lunch hour, at 5 till 2, 5 till 3, a customer would inevitably show up.
Right.
And I would end up having to spend an hour, maybe 2 hours with them before I got to go eat. And after 2 weeks of this, my wife and I have a disagreement. And I remember at one point thinking, we're really pouring a lot of energy into this argument, but I think I'm making some good points here. Let's see how this plays out. And she finally just throws up her hands and says, you're not making any sense. You sound just like you did years ago. Ew, we can't have this.
Right.
And we had to figure it out. And I had not consumed anything but meat. Nothing had changed except I was eating later. I was going hours being hangry and hungry. And we just had to come to the conclusion that meat is not just my food, it's my medicine.
Right.
If I'm late taking my medicine, there's a price to be paid. In November of 2019, I had to fast for 12 hours to get some blood work done that somebody else paid for. Because I don't care what my blood values are. I really don't. How I feel is how I judge my health now. But that 12 hours, you know, we prepared for it. I had a little baggie of bacon with me. But just being late, not being able to eat 3 or 4 hours past when I'm normally hungry. The next day, I had a 6-hour period where I knew I shouldn't talk to anybody because I was not right. That I would say or do something inappropriate, not intentionally, just because I was not perceiving things accurately.
Right.
And meat is definitely the medicine that keeps me sane. And I would love to be studied. I would love for somebody to figure out what meat does. Is it the key? Is it being in ketosis? Is that what causes it to happen? What's filling the gap
Right.
that's there when I'm not eating meat? Who knows? But
And I wonder if maybe you were just so deficient in whatever it's adding to you for so many years that this is just a healing process. I wonder if those symptoms will decline, say, after 5 years of carnivore, where you can go longer because now you've filled whatever holes there existed for the first 55 years of your life or whatever.
Well, we just don't know. We
Exactly.
just don't know. There's no way to find out.
We don't know. I mean, that's the most frustrating thing about this is we don't know anything about the carnivore diet other than it seems to work. I mean, that's it. That's all we know. There's no studies. There's no randomized control trials there. I mean, there've been a few attempts at it, but nothing that you can definitively point to and say, look, it's doing really good for a lot of people. And that's frustrating, but maybe this is just what being on the cutting edge of something is like.
Well, we know from there was an explorer named Stephenson who lived with the Inuit for like 10 years. And this was in the early 1900s. And he's written a book about it. I highly recommend to everybody. It's called Not by Bread Alone, The Fat of the Land.
Right.
And in that book, he details how, not just how the Inuit only survived eating meat, but how after he came back to civilization, he and another gentleman were a part of an experiment that lasted for 1 year with Bellevue Hospital in New York, where they only ate a carnivorous diet. And at the end of that year, both gentlemen were in pristine health with zero consequences, zero negative side effects from eating meat, only meat for a year. So there is that study. But you're right. We don't know what is the normal blood value for somebody on a carnivore diet. What's the normal lipid panel supposed to look like for somebody on a carnivore diet?
That was one of the things that really kind of surprised me. I'm not surprised, but it drove home to me how important this is when Dr. Baker did his interview on Joe Rogan. Rogan was like, okay, what is your cholesterol? And Baker said, I don't know. And he asked another, what is this? I don't know. He said, not only do I not know and I don't care, but we don't even know if when I got my cholesterol levels back, what is normal for me? We don't know because, the reference values that the kind of the world uses to look at these numbers, this is an average level of these numbers of an unhealthy population. Perhaps
exactly right.
Every range value for every single number, not just our cholesterol, but for all of the numbers that we're getting from our doctors, perhaps all of them are off because we don't have a healthy population to pull those numbers from anymore. And that's really concerning, for not just cholesterol and not just whatever, fill in the blank. Maybe that should concern us about everything. Maybe we should only use the values that from 75 years ago, that those are the things that we should be hitting, or maybe even those are wrong. We don't know. We don't know what normal is anymore.
Well, here's what I know about me. I'm going to share with you. I generally, seriously, I don't care what these lab results. I've had a standing thing. If somebody wants to pay, I'll go get the test done.
Right, exactly.
And then I'll post the results all over my social media. And so finally one day, a doctor on Twitter, a gentleman from Kansas was like, do you have any clue what your vitamin D levels are like eating this way? And I'm like, I don't have a clue, but I live in Northeast Florida and I'm out in the sun almost every day without a shirt on. I don't get a sunburn now when I'm out since as a carnivore. Probably because there's no toxins in my skin to catch fire anymore from the sun.
No polyunsaturated fats to break down in the sun. Yep.
And so this gentleman, long story short, this gentleman was curious enough to want to put up some money to find out.
Right.
And so my vitamin D, normal is 30 to 100. My vitamin D was 54.4. Not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But I got a lipid panel and I got A1C done as well. My A1C is 5.4.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it was prior to that. I do know in 2016, the year of the great, even though I was low carb, that was the year of the great white chocolate binge. because white chocolate became readily available at affordable prices. And I was still enough of a sugar addict. I sincerely tried to eat it all.
Wow.
And I had to get a blood test in the end of 2016. And this guy was such a dishonest physician. It was incredible. He tried to scare me and say that my blood sugar was over 200 and that I was pre-diabetic. Well, I found the test results the other day. My blood glucose was only 84.
Huh.
But he also tried to put me on the statin then. I knew instinctively to say no to that.
Right.
But 5.4 A1C, that's normal.
That's great. Yeah.
My cholesterol, I got a lipids panel done. My total cholesterol was 174. Triglycerides were only 63.
That's fantastic.
LDL was 92. The total cholesterol HDL ratio, 2.5. Just
Great.
eating meat and drinking water.
That's great.
But it's going to clog my arteries. I'm going to go to the ER. I need to like going to the ER for my clogged arteries.
Exactly. Yeah, my trigs went from 200 and something to 69 in a very short amount of time, just a couple months, and they stay right around 65 to 70, and they have been right there for years, and it's pretty impressive.
It's wonderful. I feel amazing.
Yeah,
I feel amazing. And my wife watched me. Suddenly, she was no longer the skinniest person in the house after I lost 94 pounds. And then I lost 22 more pounds on Carnivore. Total, in 3 years and a few months, I lost 116 pounds. Mm-hmm. And my wife was like noticing my skin I suddenly started looking younger than I did before, according to her. I look the same to me. Other people tell me this.
Right.
And so she first went low carb for a month. And then after I had survived the first month Carnivore and she saw all the changes that I experienced, and she suffered from arthritis in both shoulders and in her hands. Mm-hmm. And so she jumped on the Carnivore train. And in a month, her shoulders were completely healed.
Wow.
And her hands are almost completely healed now. She's a screen printer. When she finally retires in 4 years, that'll go away completely because she won't be doing those same hand movements 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. But every aspect of her life has been immensely improved. And what it's done for our marriage, she's 61. I turn 59 next month. But we feel like we're 20-year-olds.
Nice.
It's glorious. It's just the most wonderful, calming, liberating way to live. And people are like, that's so restrictive.
Yeah.
You know what's restrictive? Depression is restrictive.
Yeah.
Arthritis is restrictive. Mental illness in general is restrictive. Talk to me. I don't miss anything. Right. I love every bite of every meal I eat every day.
That's great. So talk to us about what you eat in a given day.
Since December of 2018, I have only eaten lean ground beef and bacon.
Oh, okay. So you don't eat steaks.
I will, but I don't crave them. I was taught to only eat the meat I crave and can afford. And this bears mentioning. I learned how to do the carnivore diet from the Facebook group, Zeroing In on Health, run by 10+ year carnivores, Charles Washington, Kelly Hogan. And they keep it really simple. I was so blessed to find them. Here's how I was taught. These are the rules. Okay. Only eat when hungry.
Yeah.
When hungry, only eat meat until you're not another bite full. Only eat the meat you crave and can afford. And never, ever put a sweet taste into your mouth. That's it. I can follow those rules all day. That's simple enough. There's no measuring. There's no macro track. There's no, just eat your meat, drink your water, and trust your body. Mm-hmm. And I've had zero issues following those rules. But so I did eat different meats in the beginning. I could intellectually understand why a lot of people complain in the beginning they get bored.
Right.
I'm just eating the steak every day. This is boring. I'm tired of it. I don't like it. I can intellectually understand that. And I never had like a favorite meat before. But I remembered I never had a meal with bacon that I didn't enjoy the meal.
Right.
So I always made sure I had bacon, then plus whatever other meat is. And in the beginning, it was bacon, steak, and eggs. Eggs stopped being satisfying. I would eat pork shoulder roast. I ate a lot of seafood and fish, but I always had bacon. And that was delicious until I saw these tubes of 90-10 ground beef in our local Sam's Club in December of 2018. And it just, out of all these beautiful cuts of meat, that just like stood out to me. It was like saying, hey, I'm right here. You better come get me. And Aaron, when we bought a roll of that, and it's the most satisfying meat for me I can eat on planet Earth. It's the only word I can put. It's delicious, but it's satisfying. Completely satisfying.
You know, it's interesting that you're eating the leaner ground beef because, you know, I was always, of course, I came from, you know, low carb and then keto, and I've only been carnivore now for about a month and a half. It's really more of an experiment that I'm doing now more than anything else. But the I was always taught to eat the fatter cuts of meat and the fatter, you know, ground beef. And since then, especially over the last 2 or 3 months, I've really tried to do a little bit more research into the protein leverage hypothesis that, you know, you've probably followed Ted Naiman. He's probably the biggest proponent of it, but there's a couple others, but this idea that it's the protein that satisfies, and the higher that ratio of protein to energy. So he just lumps carbs and fat into the same category. So whatever, you know, the carbs and the fat are of your meal, that's one side of the equation. Protein's the other. The higher that ratio of protein to energy, the more satisfied you are. So that really interests me because I've still got fat that I'm trying to lose, and I would much prefer to cut out a higher percentage of energy from my diet, even if that's fat. So I'm looking at doing more leaner ground beef and perhaps more chicken. It's, you know, the chicken more because it's cheap than anything. I haven't really seen any carnivores that are like, yeah, chicken's awesome, but but usually it's either beef or pork for the carnivores. But that's one thing that I'm trying to do a little bit of an experiment with probably in the next couple of weeks. We'll see if I actually do it. So that's really interesting that you're doing that.
Yeah, I since like the first or second week of December of 2018, maybe 5 times since then, I've only eaten the bacon and ground beef. Now, in the beginning, I was eating a whole lot more bacon than I am now. I was eating anywhere from 30 to 35 slices of bacon a day at one point.
Good.
And now I'm down to like 24 to 30 a day.
Okay.
Well,
even that's a lot.
But
I eat 4 for breakfast. And I'm like, this seems like a lot of bacon.
I started resistance training in January of 2019.
Okay.
And I put on some muscle.
Yeah.
I actually, it's been interesting. From October of 2018, I weighed 173 to the start of January. I gained I gained a little back, but I was basically stable from 176 to 181 for 15 months.
Okay.
But through my work in the gym, now my weight has been stable at 180 for like the last 45 days.
Mm.
And
that's where I'd like to get. I'd like to be right at 180. I've still got a ways to go. So that's exciting.
My waistline, though, in that period of time,
yeah,
I went from a 32 down to I can now wear 30-inch pants.
Oh, wow. Okay. So even though your weight stayed about the same or even went up, your waistline went down. That's good.
So, it kind of.
How tall are you? I should have asked that at the beginning.
I'm 6 foot tall.
Okay.
And I feel incredible. I mean, it's just a glorious way to live. For me, it's especially, I don't know, a lot of people say, well, is it because you were sick for so long? Well, it might be, but I'm happy. I've never been this happy, and I'm happy every day. From the minute I open my eyes in the morning, I wake up in a good mood. I go to bed in a good mood.
Okay.
And even though life still throws obstacles, you know, I got, my dad's not doing well, and that's kind of a downer, but it's not the end of the world.
Right.
And, you know, the car won't start now and then. Sometimes there's a repair bill and there's not money. You've got to figure. That's the normal thing in life, but it's not devastating. Before something like that would come up, and I would just take 2 Ativan and go to bed because I couldn't handle it.
Right.
I literally couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
And now the inconsequential things are just stuff I just don't waste time on anymore.
Good. That's amazing. This is an amazing story. Oh, how often do you eat? 3 times a day, twice a day?
I only eat when hungry. I do get hungry 3 times a day still. In the beginning, the first 5 months I was on Carnivore, I ate 4 times a day. I was ravenous.
Okay.
It was just ravenous. And I'm sure it's because I'd had such a crappy diet for 57 years.
Right. Yeah. You're finally getting good nutrition. Your body's wanting to get it while the getting's good.
Absolutely.
That's good. That's great. Well, man, I appreciate you coming here. This has been an amazing story. What do you think the future holds for you?
Well, it's been an incredible time, Aaron. I never imagined when I started doing this that I would be where I am today. I was blessed. Dr. Sean Baker included my story in his anecdote session of his book, The Carnivore Diet.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
And this is literally, sharing my stories literally become my vocation, because I seriously want everybody who needs to hear what happened to me to do so that they can learn how to fix their own lives, to find the hope that they're searching for. And I'm going to continue being an advocate. I can't say to a certainty, but at the Carnivore Convention, I believe I'm going to get to share my N=1 experiment. I don't know all the details yet. Amber O'Hearn asked me if I'd be interested in it, and of course I said yes.
Yeah.
She said, well, we'll be back in touch, and I haven't heard back, but I know I will. So I'm excited about that. I'm sure I've written an outline for a book, and I'm not doing it because, I want to write a book, because I know what a time commitment that is. Plus, to do it properly, I will have to wander down parts of memory lane that aren't a lot of fun to walk down.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I've had a lot of folks reach out to me and say that a lot of folks would get help from it. So I'm probably going to do it, and I probably will start after the Carnivore Convention.
That sounds great. That sounds fantastic. So if my people want to follow you on Twitter and Instagram and all that good stuff, where's a good place to do all that?
Okay. Instagram at thankful.carnivore.
Thankful.carnivore.
On Twitter, where the meat-eating savages run wild, you can find me at Stickman Bleeding. That's StickmanBleedin. Don't add a G. And I also have a YouTube channel at Thankful Carnivore.
Okay. And what is Stickman?
Okay, that was my old stage name.
Okay.
From when I was a performing musician for over 20 years. I played all over the Southeast in clubs and bars. And my first time in a recording studio, I wrote an instrumental that somebody added some lyrics to that became a song, sort of, and it was called Stickman.
Oh, okay.
And some musicians that I know, and at that time they were just struggling people like me, gigging here, gigging there, and but they later became the Billy Ray Cyrus and Sly Dog thing. I gave them a copy of one of my copies I got for doing the album, etc. thing. Somebody else paid for it all. Anyway, I gave them a copy of it to listen to, and they christened me the Stickman.
Fantastic.
And I was not a drummer. I wasn't even skinny then. I mean, I looked a lot like physically I was about a little heavier than I am now, but I had hair, but I wasn't some skinny guy or anything. It was just a nickname they gave me. And that's where that came from.
Fantastic. All right, guys, we're going to let everyone know about that. And guys, so those of you listening, if you go to mysugarfreejourney.com/podcast, we'll put links to everything he just mentioned there in the show notes. All good stuff. So thank you so much for coming on, Brett.
Thank you so much, Aaron, for the opportunity to speak with you and your audience.
Fantastic. All right, guys, if you hold on, we'll be right back with some more information.